Since the dawn of the GAA in 1884, the telling of its stories have been just as important as the sports. Through the years, heroes and matches have been immortalised, inspiring generation after generation. But some of its most important stories have also gotten lost or turned into legend. And in this series, we will explore some of the GAA's most fascinating forgotten tales, separating rumour from reality and myth from the truth that is often more amazing than the fiction. I'm Michael Foley.
And I'm Ciaran O'Hara.
So join us for Over the Bar, exploring the histories of the GAA.
Love GAA history? Then you love going deeper with Over the Bar's Cordia Club membership. For just €5 a month, you'll get exclusive member-only episodes and series, early ad-free access to the main podcast, plus detailed show notes, a newsletter, and the chance to have your questions answered. Join Michael Foley and Ciaran O'Hara as they uncover the stories, the legends, and the questions that shaped our games. Don't just listen, be part of the club. Join now at overthebar.club.
Hello and welcome to the latest edition of Over the Bar, the Gaelic Games History podcast. And Michael, you put a question out in the ether.
Yes, I did.
We'd had such a response to our Cork jersey episode that we'd been batting this around and you said we should be doing one of these pretty regularly, the origins of the jersey.
Yeah.
So you put out a poll on, as Vincent Brown used to call it, the tweet machine. And the choices you offered were Wexford, the Yellow Bellies.
Yes.
Or Carlow.
The Scallionators.
So, the Scallionators, is that what they're called?
The Scallionators. I know that not in a Terminator kind of way. Like they're not going around with scallions,
they're
using them as
eating scallions, weapons. I presume.
Apparently, at some point back in the 1800s, Carlow was an enormous producer of onions.
Before they started growing sugar beet, presumably.
Absolutely. A topic very close to my heart, Ciaran. Those trucks drove past my house all the time during the winter. I worked in Mallow Beet Factory. My father worked out there, so don't come to me now about Carlow.
I'm not dissing the Shukra, my man. I am not dissing the Shukra.
So the Scallionators. So apparently the Scallionators, so Schwarzenegger, the Scallionators. Apparently scallions were a very major part of the Carlovian diet for many decades in the 1800s. Carlovians
sounds like a rugby club for the town, doesn't it? Old Carlovians.
Old Carlovians. I love it. So it's such a peculiarly distinctive GAA county for all sorts of reasons we're going to get into in a minute. Spoiler alert, by the way.
Carlow won the poll. Yeah,
Carlow won the poll in a landslide. I mean, if it was a GAA Congress, they got their 2/3 majority fairly comfortably.
A landslide of beet falling down a hillside.
Yeah, that was it. Tumbling sugar beet. We're going to get into why do Carlow wear red, yellow, and green?
There's our question. Why do Carlow wear red, yellow, and green? Why do they wear the Bob Marley One Love, all the other... what was that ice pop in the 1980s that used to be several colours?
Oh, yeah. Oh, my God. Do you know what I've got in my head? Because you can buy one now that's I think it's like a fruit pasty lolly or something like that. And they're red, green, and yellow. The traffic light county. There's all sorts of ways you can go. I love the Carlow jersey, by the way. Before anybody thinks we're here just to slag Carlow off or have a bit of crack at their expense. Not at all. I picked Carlow and Wexford, or I suggested Carlow and Wexford as the two ones we should put out there because they are the two most distinctive psychedelic, fashion choices by a GAA county that I can think of. Although when you start to think of it, how many other sports have, green jerseys with yellow bands, saffron and blue? They're all fairly kind of funky in their own ways when you think about funky color choices. But definitely like Carlow, green, red and yellow. It's red, yellow, green. We should get that straight first off. It's red, yellow, green.
And I saw one of the responses to your tweet. Do we still call them tweets, or are they
X's, I don't know,
axioms?
whatever there.
And in a nod to Rastafarianism, we did have a response to your poll from Carlow, who said that it was green for the land, yellow for the sun, and red for the blood that was spilled for the land. Is this true?
Well, it's a wonderful. I mean, I wish it was. I
It's
mean,
highly evocative.
that should be the explanation. That should just be it. We should just be going, and there you go. That's why they wear red, yellow, and green, because it's kind of cool. It's a little bit more prosaic, I suppose, in some ways, and a little bit more tangled all at the one time. A bit more straightforward and complicated than that. Very, very simply, the short answer as to why do they wear green, red, and yellow? Well, Ciaran, Mayo have a role to play here.
Love a good Mayo story.
Well, you're going to get a good one now for a good 30-second one anyway. So through the 1920s and into the 1930s, Carlow actually wore green jerseys with red shoulders, which were based on the colours of Greg Cullen GA Club, who were the dominant football force in the early part of the century in Carlow. So hold
on now. Greg Cullen.
Yeah.
Now, I know Greg Cullen is on one side of the barrow, the opposite side of the barrow from Carlow Town, but Greg Cullen's in Laois.
Correct. And we will come to that in about 90 seconds. The very short answer to why they were yellow is because Carlow played Mayo in a 1933 All-Ireland Junior Football semi-final, and it was a colour clash, green and red, green and red. So Carlow actually ended up wearing blue. Now, it's never been confirmed exactly why they wore blue. It might have been O'Hanrahan's.
It's not the provincial colours. Yeah.
No, that would have been green. So it could be O'Hanrahan's GA Club from Carlow Town. They play in blue, but it was never verified. But anyway, to avoid any more colour clashes, Carlow decided to add a yellow hoop. And the yellow came from Milford GA Club, who were the county champions in 1933. So Carlow actually played their first Leinster Senior Football Championship game in 1934 wearing red, yellow, green. So that's the very simple one. But you mentioned Greg Cullen there. We do need to rewind because you make a very fair point. Greg Cullen, it's in Laois, right?
Yeah, it's in Laois.
Basically.
There's been Greg Cullen footballers playing for Laois in certainly all of my lifetime.
If you look at the Roll of Honour for the Carlow Senior Football Championship, you will see that Greg Cullen were the
which
dominant
I do
club, as I
frequently.
said. Frequently, who doesn't? You'll all know that they won 13 county titles between 1908 and 1925. And in 1926, Greg came again looking for 6 county titles in a row. So they're the ones. And they're playing, funny enough, Milford, who I just mentioned there. The game, the final, is played in a place called Ratho, which Ciaran, not only was it hosting county finals, it's also the home of the wonderfully named Fighting Cocks.
One of the most famous GA club names in the country.
I mean, there's a whole other episode on why they're called the Fighting Cocks, I think. And maybe it's not even for a sports podcast. I'm not sure. Anyhow, the game was played at Ratho. Now, the story I'm going to tell you from here on is, I know if there's any Carlovians listening in, they will know this story. And
or old Carlovians, for that matter.
Well, they probably are. They probably will be old Carlovians if they know this story is very intimately. It's been told in many, many different ways. My own source for this is an excellent podcast interview that was done back around COVID time in 2020 with a local Carlow historian called John Kelly. And I'll put the link up in the show notes for people to go and watch the whole thing if you want to really get into the nuts and bolts of this. It's a very, very controversial story. So it's Greg Cullen versus Milford in the county senior final. There was some history between these two, by the way. They played a junior football match in 1923 that descended into just a mass brawl that was so bad that the referee received £6, a whopping £6 for his injuries, Ciaran.
Oh, Jesus.
Like, I'll be honest, and maybe this is something you've done before. Maybe you could do a quick, how much is £6?
I have done this before on previous episodes, but I am not going to try and figure out what £6 is in modern money. It's a lot. I imagine that's better than a night on winning streak.
Oh, it's huge money, right? So that's 1923. So 3 years on, they're meeting as senior teams now in the county final. And again, it seems to have been quite a rough game. The players were warned about their conduct at some stage in the game by the referee. Late in the second half, Milford,
who, by the way,
points.
must be the bravest man in the country to go into that game.
Well, absolutely. So Milford are 4 points up going into the closing stages of the final. And a man called John McDarby from Greg is injured. No, sorry, when I say injured, he's knocked out and he wakes up with a broken shoulder. Now, what happened? Some people said it was accidental. Others said he was dragged by the neck and kicked on the ground. And a free-for-all ensued that included the crowd. And people were injured in this brawl. You know, it wasn't just a kind of a pushing and pulling affair. There was people.
And this is all on record, I presume, like in the Carlow Nationalist story.
Carlow Nationalists all report, and as I say, very, very well put together by John Kelly in that pod that I'll share. The match is abandoned. The Milford team need a Garda escort to leave the field, and according to the story, going home, they have to go home through Tullow. Milford is a little place just outside of Carlow town, I think. So they go home through Tullow, and when they do, the Milford team and the supporters are set upon by Greg Cullen supporters, and a fight ensues where one young man gets cut in the nose by a knife. Now, legend has it that the row lasted all evening, and eventually they stopped, but some supporters came back again the following day to pick up where they left off. But I think we can leave that in the realms of
this sounds
legend.
Positively medieval. This sounds like faction fight stuff. Like,
well, we're coming out of the home of the Fighting Cocks. There's, it does all sound like it's from a completely different time. Understandably and unsurprisingly, the secretary of the Greg Cullen Club subsequently refutes all of these stories. He said that, McDarby was deliberately assaulted by a Milford player on the field. The referee had warned Milford, he said, and when it came to the fight in Tullow, there was no knives produced in this scrap, according to the Greg Cullen secretary. Who are we to argue? Nearly 100 years later. The referee's report, you mentioned about the referee being the bravest man in the country to take that game on. Well, he had wise words if this game was going to be replayed. His report said, if it is replayed, it should be played outside of County Carlow and at a closed ground. So behind closed doors, somewhere else, Kilkenny, maybe Laois. Take it away.
I was going to say,
Carlow.
Technically, you could play it in Greg Cullen.
Greg Cullen.
It's in Laois.
Yeah, it is.
Love the free episodes of Over the Bar? Then take your passion further with the Corja Club membership. For €5 a month, you'll unlock bonus series and member-only shows. Hear the podcast first and ad-free, and get behind-the-scenes access through detailed notes, a newsletter, and Q&As. It's the ultimate GEA history experience, curated by Michael Foley and Ciaran O'Hara just for you. Upgrade your listening, support the show. Join today at overthebar.club.
So we roll on. August 1926, Carlow County Board meeting in Ratho. The decision is taken to suspend Greg Cullen for 2 years. And this is where the Laois bit comes in now. So Greg Cullen appealed this to the Leinster Council. The referee's report, they say, suggests that Milford were the aggressor. It's the Greg player who's gotten injured that causes the brawl. The county chairman, Carlow at the time, Father Lawler, disagrees. So the next thing that happens is Greg Cullen say, well, maybe we should just move to Laois. Maybe that's just what we should do. And the Leinster Council go, okay, there seems to be, it's a situation where they're probably looking going, it's going to be very hard for Greg Cullen to continue playing after 2 years. We don't want the club to die because, how long would it take for a GA club to disappear from existence at any time? A 2-year ban is like a death sentence. So they join Laois in 1927. But by the way, the ban is still upheld under Carlow rules. So if Greg Cullen never have any notions of going back to Carlow, I guess there's a 2-year ban to be served before they play a game. So I guess that kind of rules that out.
It does sound to me, though, like it was a natural enough decision in that it's in Laois for administrative purposes. It's like, I gathered the parish, if you like, in terms of the church, is Greg Cullen and Kileshin. Kileshin's in Laois as well. So this was probably the ideal solution at the time.
It probably was. It essentially meant that the club wouldn't dissolve, wouldn't fall apart. Carlow, had their decision upheld. Greg Cullen got to keep playing football, and as you say, it was as easy, I suppose, for them to pivot.
And Milford got to deface the Greg Cullen jersey
via the county jersey.
and have it worn as the county jersey.
Exactly. So yeah, I suppose everybody was kind of a winner. So as I say, I mean, why I mentioned that story is because it's amazing to me that they actually kept the grey Cullen colours then for the county team. They didn't dispense with them, even though they had effectively left. Well, they had effectively expelled them from football in Carlow, but they said, I like the green and red though. We'll keep that. So they kept the green and red. As I said, they played that game against Mayo. They added the yellow hoop. They won Leinster junior titles wearing green and red in the early 30s, 31 and 33. But now the green,
and then they step up to senior championship for the first time, and the constant ever since has been green, red, and yellow.
Well, I wouldn't say constant now. I would say it's the one that we're most familiar. We all, you see, again, because it's the nature of the GA. We're all consumed by our own county. We're not necessarily keeping an eye on what's going on in other counties. If we think of Carlow, we certainly think red, yellow, green. Traffic lights, red, yellow, green. Not necessarily the case for many decades. So in 1944, Carlow win a Leinster senior football title, and indeed they are wearing red, yellow, green. But it's funny to note, and this is something that recurs up the years, they weren't all wearing the same jersey. So some Carlow jerseys that day had an extra yellow hoop on top. And by the way, and again, I will include the link for the show notes, there is a magnificent blog on the story of the Carlow jersey online. It's so excellently curated right up to the current day. It's fantastic to see the evolution of these jerseys. Interesting, 1945, the year after Carlow won the Leinster title, Leinster won a Railway Cup wearing the Carlow jersey. Why? Because there was a shortage of wool. It's the emergency stroke World War II.
Okay, it's during the Warriors.
So
it's not a nod to, our reigning champions are.
No, it wouldn't be nice if it was, though. But it's not, unfortunately. I suppose to be wearing sky blue a lot over the years, maybe other things. Well, maybe not, I don't know. But shortage of wool, couldn't make the Leinster green jerseys. So Leinster opted for the provincial champion colours, which were Carlow. And it was actually a Carlow captain as well, which was nice. But very quickly to run through the decades afterwards. So in the 60s, they went back to red with green shoulders. There was the odd yellow cuff and collar here and there. There was a crest added in the 1970s based on the Carlow town crest. They often used change strips. When they went back to green and red again, if they needed to use change strips, they tended to use club colours. So Tinryland were given a run out. Éire Óg, red, were given a run out. O'Hanrahan's were given a run out. It was only the mid-80s when the tricolour jerseys came back. And they were kind of gone again in about 10 years or so. But
yeah, there was a version in the 90s that was kind of, can't recall if it was mostly green with yellow and red trim or red with yellow and green trim, but it didn't have the band in the middle.
We're kind of getting into now an area that, and I don't want to stretch this too far, but I do think it's reasonable to say that how Carlow managed their jersey is sometimes reflective of how the county team was managed, and might suggest why they weren't always as successful as they could have been. For a county that has great GA heritage in hurling and football, that they haven't been a bit more successful over the years. So you mentioned there that there was a predominant colour. So in the 90s, between 91 and 93, the Carlow footballers wore red jerseys and green sleeves, but the hurlers were in red, yellow, green, right? They won a couple of All-Ireland B titles in hurling and football between 92 and 94, both of them now wearing tricolour jerseys again, but it was very, very messy. So the hurlers won their All-Ireland title in 92, and they went into the Leinster Senior Hurling Championship for the first time in 37 years. They played Kilkenny. 2 players were wearing jerseys from the All-Ireland B final against London the year before that had been specially designed for the final, and the rest were wearing the jerseys that had been worn pre-final. So, for the eagle-eyed, there was no yellow chevron on the sleeve and there was red cuff. So you could tell, like in the team photo, you could tell there's fellas wearing different jerseys here. In 1995, very famous game against Laois. Remember, there was a disallowed point, or there was a disputed point.
Oh, yeah, and we're talking a derby.
A derby, yeah, Laois Carlow. Imagine Greg Cullen that weekend. So, again, Carlow are wearing 2 different types of jersey. Now, the red, yellow, green is the predominant colour, but they're clearly 2 different jerseys. It gets worse. In June 2000, they played an All-Ireland intermediate hurling game against Kildare in Nolan Park in Kilkenny. But Carlow arrived with no jerseys at all, didn't even bring jerseys. So their manager at the time was Georgie Leahy, Kilkenny City man, James Stevens man. And again, eagle-eyed observers of Kilkenny hurling will know that James Stevens...
So I was about to say the grey Cullen jerseys just made a reappearance.
Yeah, they're getting rolled out again for this one. Georgie made a couple of calls, God bless him, and got a set of James Stevens jerseys down, which are green and red. So that was close enough in 2000. Between 2013 and 2015, again, it's predominantly red or green. And it's, in 2022, they only launch a new jersey when the footballers are already out of the championship and the hurlers are halfway through the McDonagh Cup. So you see what I'm saying? There's a sort of a slight reflection of the sometimes kind of messy state of affairs in Carlow and how they're running their teams and how they're managing their jersey selections and how they get them there. But the big one, Ciaran, the big one came in 2006 when Liam Hayes decided there needed to be a new broom. And one of the things that the broom was going to sweep up was the Carlow jersey.
So the football manager comes in and decides to change the Carlow jersey, yeah?
Exactly. He was in year 2.
Does it change for the hurlers too?
Not at all. So does it change for anybody? It was February 2006. It's front page news in the Carlow Nationalist, as you can imagine. It really does provoke a lot of debate and kind of reflection around the place, actually. But Liam Hayes says, I asked them, the county chairman and secretary, to consider it. The county needs a change. We need to change everything we are doing. The Carlow jersey is not particularly intimidating. We have won nothing in 60 years, so it's hardly sacred. Now, a county official in reply said the question of changing the colours of the jerseys will not be considered at the moment. And Tommy O'Neill, the Carlow secretary back then, told the Nationalist that the jersey was considered sacred by many in the county. So you can kind of see where Liam Hayes is coming from in the sense of we just have to completely reimagine a new future here for Carlow. And maybe the green, red and yellow jerseys are, maybe he sees them as something that's poked fun at her. It's not exactly striking fear into the hearts of the opposition.
They were the jerseys they wore when they'd won their only Leinster senior title.
Exactly. They were the jerseys they wore when they entered the Leinster Senior Football Championship for the first time. Leinster wore them. There is heritage in these things. I mean, when you think back here on in modern times, I mean, we know we've talked about jerseys before. It's a changeable thing way back before they get nailed down and registered colours. But, I mean, in my memory, Sligo are the only team I can think of who changed their jersey colour dramatically. So when they beat Kildare in the All-Ireland qualifiers in 2001, it was the first win ever in Croke Park, I think, in senior championship. Wearing black. And they wore black again the next day against the Dubs. And they then that winter changed from white being the registered first kit to black. And that stayed for a long, long, long time.
And we've had Donegal change from the banded jersey to a predominantly gold jersey.
Yes.
But those are probably the two big ones, really.
They're kind of it. I mean, Derry in recent years, mainly and was more a managerial choice, wore their second strip, if you want to call it that, which would be
the red with the white band, yeah.
Rather than white with a red band. But we're not talking about sweeping a whole design away. The colours are there. Okay, and only in the case of Sligo, when you go from black, or you go from white to black, that's pretty, dramatic. But that's the only one I can think of. There's a lot of heritage involved in these things. Now, again, I can understand where Hayes is coming from. At the time, he was really talking big. Like, at the time, he said 7 or 8 Carlow players would make a combination team involving Meath, Dublin and Carlow back around 05, 06, which I'd want to be looking at those squads to have a proper drill into that to see if that's the case. But
it might have been during the O'Byrne Cup.
Possibly. So, but you can see what he's trying to do. He's trying to
big them up and raise expectations and change the direction and change the narrative. And Liam is a particularly adept narrator when it comes to these things.
Absolutely. And by the way, a Carlovian by birth. So, he had skin in the game here, And to be fair, Carlow did beat Wicklow in the Leinster Championship in 2006, but unfortunately Liam Hayes didn't last beyond 2006. And the red, yellow, green jersey has lasted all the way to the current day. And I don't see any sign of it being dispensed with anytime soon. And I hope it's not, because I tell you, I mean, whatever about the results, and people can argue, sure, it's a bit of Carlow are a minnow in terms of hurling and football and so on. I think seeing that Carlow jersey adds greatly to the gaiety of the whole thing. It's on a lovely, bright summer's evening in Dr. Cullen Park when you see the sun bouncing off those red, yellow and green jerseys. It's a fine sight to behold. I'm sure there are many old Carlovians out there who will agree with me on that.
They're genuinely a proper dual county, though. Like, in one regard, you do kind of look at Carlow and say, if they had been predominantly one sport or the other, they might have achieved more in that sport. But what they have tended to be, yes, a minnow, but they are a dual county.
Love GEA history? Then you love going deeper with Over the Bar's Cordia Club membership. For just €5 a month, you'll get exclusive member-only episodes and series, early ad-free access to the main podcast, plus detailed show notes, a newsletter, and the chance to have your questions answered. Join Michael Foley and Ciaran O'Hara as they uncover the stories, the legends, and the questions that shaped our games. Don't just listen, be part of the club. Join now at overthebar.club.
They play senior championship very frequently in both codes.
They have stayed as faithful as is humanly possible to the fundamental core values of the association, which is to promote all the games equally, and particularly the two predominant sports, hurling and Gaelic football. So credit to them for that. As I say, we can look back at how the jerseys were managed over the years and turning up to championship games with no jerseys at all, or wearing two different versions of the same jersey, and go, yeah, maybe your organisation needs a look. That's just, it's a tiny example of why your whole organisation might need a proper just look over to see are we doing everything as best as we can. But I hope that the Carlow jersey lives long and prospers well into the future. I think it's a wonderful adornment to the summer.
Well, I have to say, just in the last few minutes while we were talking, I decided to put in Greg Cullen and Carlow as a Google search.
Okay.
And an article popped up from Laois Today in 2019 saying that there are plans for the Laois community to be taken over by Carlow in a realignment of borders.
Oh my goodness.
And I was sucked in, Michael, and I started to scroll down, and the suggestions that this was all about poaching Greg Cullen footballers for Carlow, etc., etc. And then I thought, I must check the date on this piece. 1st of April 2019.
Yeah, I can't imagine they're going to redig the barrow to get Greg Cullen in, or indeed that Greg Cullen will look at it and go, you mean we have to serve a 2-year ban before we get to play football here again? By the way, that's a parting shot. You mentioned Rastafarianism and all the rest of it, right? I mean, if Bose can get away with using Bob Marley and Bob Marley playing a gig at Dalymount Park as a marketing, advertising platform, let us say, for their jerseys, I want to see the Whalers on that Carlow jersey. One love.
I think you've just nailed how to make the Carlow jersey global. And it should be, because it is a spectacular. It's so unique when you consider all the GA jerseys that there are, and I wasn't expecting to hear that Mayo prompted the change.
There you go. You're everywhere. You're like a virus.
Well, folks, so this has been the second episode on Jersey Origins. Do drop us a line and let us know what you'd like, which one you'd like us to look at next. Like, there are stories in all of these jerseys. And I know I've been saying this pretty frequently lately, but go into the application where you are listening to this. Find the rating button, the 5-star button. Hit the 5-star button. Rate us if you like us. Share us if you like us. Like us if you like us. Because we want to get these stories out to a wider audience. We are about independent GA storytelling. And if you really want a bit more, sign up for our Cordia Club membership at overthebar.club, where we now have a significant bank of exclusives for Cordia members with a wide variety of other stories. Okay, folks, that's it for this week. We'll chat to you soon. Slán.